Hello, it's Robert Grant again. Today, I wanted to have a look at the topic needs. Well, growing up, we're all passed on quite simply with the truth. Our needs are food, clothing, and shelter. In some ways, this is the whole truth. As a child, we are given food, we are clothed, and we are sheltered. This means we were literally brought up to the time of independence. The Bible as well has a view much as that of the preceding. It says if we have food, clothing, and shelter, we should be content with that. Yet another need is addressed later on in the Bible, and that is the need for companionship. And we are unable to have companionship unless we are providing food, clothing, and shelter for a child. And yet, as you may have, through general observation, food, clothing, and shelter can also add love. Food, clothing, and shelter just may mean loving parents. To view needs biblically, I have decided to take a walk through portions of the Bible. Well, from the beginning of the Bible to the end, God reveals himself or doesn't reveal himself at stages of life's journey. First, God doesn't start the Bible by saying God is love. He works from himself alone as God and creates heaven, earth, plants, people, animals, stars, moon, and the sun. And then on the seventh day, he initiates a day of rest. Collecting himself as God, he creates man and woman and set them in the Garden of Eden. There was no sin. Everything at that point was still perfect. God is said to walk and talk with his created man and woman, yet nothing is spoken of it. They spoke to God in the garden, and that's all that was written. They spoke with God. Yet within his holding of supremacy, of being God, through his sovereignty as God, his care shines forth, resting on the seventh day from all his works. Through his purity, that act tells us that he wants the best for us. And from there, Adam and Eve, the man and woman, have children who have children who have children who have children. And sin had entered the world. The time of Noah came about. Noah, as you may remember, is the builder of the ark for Noah and his ark, the flood that wiped out ancient humanity. God, who had need say nothing, had Noah proclaim the sins of the people and the road to repentance, yet none of them, except his three sons, listened to him. So creation went from walking with God, to living through God's judgment, the flood, to choosing a nation to be known by his name, which was Moses and the soon-to-be Israelites. And 8 Moses is the words from God to Moses, take off your shoes, for where you're standing is holy ground. And God makes known his holiness to Moses. And that brings us to the time of Jesus. And it's in Jesus' time where the Bible said, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. It's also in Jesus' time when he speaks of people's need, which is man should not live on bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God. So our greatest need is the words of God. To finish, I'll mention Jesus eventually was crucified and laid in a tomb where God raised him from the dead as his only begotten Son. So from Jesus' time till now, there's the Bible with Jesus' power in it and his revelation of God is love, with the writings of Jesus as our nearness. The Bible uses the fullness of the love of God to bring us to the purity that is opening a right living with creation. God's divine power revealed himself, walking with, to begin, and proclaiming himself for a complete, his love and his heart. As the earth sits on its axis, any closer to the sun and it would burn, any further away and it would freeze, so may God's revelation of himself bring him praise. Thank you for listening.